Welcome to Napa Valley Inside Out. I'm Latif Hasan, and I am delighted to be hosting this podcast, shining a light on one of the most beautiful and coveted lifestyles in the world. If you're interested in developing a property, planting a vegetable garden, making olive oil, fashion, architecture, interior design, county rules and regulations, biking paths, art, getting into the wine business, farming practices, the tax benefits of owning a vineyard, or the ultimate private tours and tastings, and all the fabulous annual cultural events we enjoy here, and so much more, then you won't want to miss this show. Every week I will be interviewing amazing talent, vintners, entrepreneurs, leaders, consultants, festival organizers, and well-known personalities in the Valley. They will share their knowledge, experience, advice, goals, passions, and their best-kept secrets. Hello everybody, Bernard Lauper, CEO of MacCorkle Insurance, is with us today. Bernard has a wealth of knowledge and experience in insurance, and he's going to walk us through the hard market we are all experiencing here since the fires in California. So Bernard, I'm very, very excited about this. Welcome to the show. This is a great topic and a very hot one at the moment.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. You have been working with a lot of high net worth individuals for a very long time throughout the Bay Area and up here in Napa, where you and Pam are building a home. So you're very familiar with what we all went through, and I'm sure have a lot of clients who are fire survivors. So let's start out, though, with a little summary of your background.
Sure. Well, you say a long time. You've already dated me, but roughly 30 years ago, when I got out of college, I went to work directly in the insurance industry and for one of the largest insurance companies. And I was very lucky in that they sent me back to Hartford, Connecticut in February, and they had something called group school back in those days, insurance school. So I worked for that company for 7 to 8 years. And after that, I had a entrepreneurial itch to go do something new, and I went to work for a very small insurance brokerage company located on the peninsula in San Francisco. And I had two great partners. I had a wonderful team I worked with, and we were very fortunate. The company grew and grew and grew. And 3 years ago, we actually sold the company to a private equity-backed firm called Risk Strategies, and I now work for them.
Fantastic. It's a great background. Mm-hmm. You and I have had some conversations lately. I've had a few Mayday calls to you, you might recall, in the last week or so. And I'll just tell our viewers that I have a property in escrow that is, way up in the 7 digits. And the buyer is highly qualified and very connected. He's a fire survivor. And he has been trying to get insurance to buy this property, and not only has been rejected by his own insurance company, by the seller's insurance company, and many others, big names, right? What do you call the insurance companies that are like the AIGs, the Chubb? Is there a term for them? Cincinnati?
Well, they're the high net worth carriers, and those are also admitted carriers in the state of California.
Right, that's right. They are yeah. So those carriers have all said no. And in fact, one of them we thought we might have luck with because they are new to California and haven't had a lot of claims. And they dispatched their fire team to come and look at the property, which is surrounded by vineyards. And they did come back that they would insure it, but like at a phenomenal number, somewhere around the $40,000, $50,000 a year. And they wanted the buyer to install a water system around their house where the water would spray away from the house in the event of fire. And that's an enormous amount of money, because what would you pay for, say, $8-9 million property for insurance?
Well, it's obviously it's highly variable, but I think the key here, what we're talking about, is that hard market. And
yes.
Just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we're talking about hard market. We talked about the AIGs and the Pures and the Chubbs. These are all companies that are admitted in California. Obviously last year with all the fires in California, the mudslides in Montecito, and then let's not also forget the hurricanes, right, in Texas and Florida.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, over the last year or so, the insurance companies have paid out literally billions and billions in claims.
Right.
So it's what we have when we have a hard market is that the insurance companies are saying, you know what, especially in California right now, we really don't want more business. So you have, when I say admitted carrier, that means that these companies have gone to the Department of Insurance, State of California, and they are licensed to do business. The Department of Insurance reviews their coverage, their pricing, what have you. So these carriers are now saying, no, thank you. We don't want your beautiful home up in the wine country here. So you're forced to go to what we call a non-admitted, a surplus market. And the easiest way to think of that is London, Lloyd's. And the problem with that is, so just to give you a rough idea, if you were paying $1,000 in homeowners insurance in an admitted market, in this current market, you're going to pay somewhere between 2 to 4x. So instead of $1,000, $2,000 if you're lucky, $4,000 if you're not lucky. Oh, and by the way, did I tell you that the coverage they're going to offer is probably not quite as good?
Yeah, oh, definitely not. But,
Yeah.
I mean, we've been through this. We've been living it in the trenches. It has been shocking to see, which is why you get calls from me about my renewal. So that's another thing. So let's ask, I'm going to ask you about, are they cancelling anybody's insurance?
Yes. Over the last month or so, I actually got one this morning also. We're getting letters from these companies saying that your current clients are all being canceled coverage. Sometimes we're getting letters saying we will cancel this client if they don't do X, Y, or Z. For example, in your situation in Calistoga, if they don't put a sprinkler system in, we'll cancel them. So there are sometimes you have at least have an option to do something. Other times it's a flat cancellation. We just don't want you anymore.
Incredible. I actually even heard of somebody in St. Helena in the city limits on the valley floor, a small house in a neighborhood, couldn't get insurance.
I was dealing with a gentleman a few days ago who has a house in the middle of San Francisco that I've told him, like, look, you're going to have to stay with the insurance company you're currently with. It's not a great fit, but I can't get you anything better than what you currently have. Mm-hmm. So hopefully when the market softens down in the future, we'll come back and hopefully remarket his coverage at that point and find the right fit. But for right now, he's stuck.
It's kind of interesting because if they stop taking on new clients, which I totally understand, and they do some cancellations, I mean, how do they survive? I mean, they need the premiums, right?
Well, sure. You need, obviously every business, every insurance company wants premiums, but they don't want to take a premium in where they have to pay more out in claims, right? It's the classic, well, I got $1 worth of revenue, but I had to pay out $1.50 in claims. I'm not saying they would, but that's the thinking process.
Yeah.
The thinking process right now is that we have too much business in the wrong areas at this point in time, and we need to scale that back.
Right. And you know, as much as we're up here in the wine country with lots of fabulous trees and greenery, we also have a lot of vineyards which were fire breaks and prevented a lot of the fires. But you know, I do want to say this to our viewers because having gone through this experience in the last week, if you are rebuilding or you are building and you put in a pool, make sure that the water from the pool is piped to go through and they for the fire brigade. Of course, they're going to make you have a sprinkler system in your house and a 3,500 gallon tank at a minimum. But I will tell you that when I built my house, they said you have to have a fire tank, you have to have a sprinkler system. And I thought that was great. I put it all in, and then I realized after the fires that I didn't have a generator, and they had not said to me, oh, you need to have a generator. And of course my well was not pumping because there was no electricity. So the fire sprinklers and the tank were useless. So make sure you have a generator as well, and just do everything you can to mitigate the problem, because insurance is going to go up for, I would say, some time. And if the fires and all the losses continue throughout the country, we're going to be paying a large amount of insurance premiums unless we can show people that, in the insurance companies, that we've actually done as much as we possibly can to mitigate problems.
I think you just hit the nail on the head there, which is the word I would use is prevention.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've discovered in all these fires over the last year or so is, obviously if you think of a house that's built with wood, with a wood shake roof, that's probably going to burn first versus, a house made with a steel roof and steel beams. Yes. But what we saw on this last fire was those. I mean, obviously you want to have the steel roof over the steel frame from a fire prevention standpoint. But what we saw was that houses that were built with wood that had done all the prevention, clearing the brush out to 150 feet, making sure that there wasn't firewood stacked up against the house, that did a lot of prevention. Lots of times those houses survived, where the house like right down the street that had the steel roof and the steel frame hadn't done the prevention, the house burned.
Oh, interesting.
It is. So what I would tell folks that one of the lessons we've learned from the fire is prevention really does matter and
Yes.
does help.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I remember when I built my house, we were going to put cedar outside, and they made us use hardy board.
Right.
Yeah. So for all the people building, rebuilding, and building, really take this into consideration, I would say. Tell us how the insurance companies have changed from your perspective. Give us some examples apart from.
The fires have really changed the way they have to think about things. Like every industry, they've got software, and they were doing modeling on catastrophes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they discovered was that the models just don't equate to what actually happened in the real world. I think you can make an argument that the fires that happened in Napa kind of followed the models, with the hill fires and how that
Mm-hmm.
happened. But certainly the fires that happened up in Santa Rosa, in particular Coffee Park,
Yes.
right? Nowhere was that in the model. Nowhere was it in the model that the fire would jump a major U.S. freeway by a mile, and that virtually every house in a subdivision would go up. They just didn't plan for it.
Incredible.
So now they have to go back and look at the model and say, okay, all these assumptions that we made are no longer valid. And unfortunately, as homeowners and policy holders here in California, it's not good news, because what we're realizing as an insurance industry is that the risks are way higher than we thought they were.
Yeah, way higher. What options do owners have when their insurance gets cancelled? And you were telling me that people are getting cancelled.
Yeah, no, people are going to get cancellations this year, probably next year.
And how do they determine that? Do you know?
It's a black box with every insurance company, but I would tell you that these are probably the most common factors. One is there's been other claims. Hey, you've had 2 claims last year, you're gone. The other factor would be you're just in a really heavy brush area. Places like obviously the wine country, but places like Mill Valley, Woodside, Lake Tahoe, right? Hey, there's a bunch of trees, there's a bunch of brush. It hasn't burned in over 100 years, right? When it does burn, it's going to be very, very hot. Another one might be Coffee Park, for example. Geographic distribution. There was a few insurance companies, a few of the direct writers, companies that don't work with brokers, they work directly with consumers, that had a tremendous amount of business in that subdivision, right? And I would guarantee you those underwriters now are saying, you know what, I'm making this up. We have 100 houses in this neighborhood or this zip code. We should really only have 50 because of a geographic distribution of risk. Because if another fire happens, we don't want those 100 houses. We can handle 50 losses, but we can't handle 100. So they might literally say, Lateef, Bernard, you guys are neighbors. We can only have one house in the neighborhood, so Lateef, we're going to cancel your coverage. Bernard's going to stay with us.
And maybe they'll stay with me because they have my car and my jewelry and my whatever.
Yeah, there's always been.
Tell us about that.
Well, there's certainly always been advantages to bundling coverage.
Yes.
Right? Every underwriter loves to have all your business.
Yeah.
So if you have home and you put the auto and the valuable articles, the jewelry, the art collections, wine collection, you get a discount on the home. And if you have liability insurance, they'll give you a discount on the home. So that if they were looking to cancel the 2 of us, and they have literally all your insurance, and they just have my homeowners, they'd probably cancel me first.
Yeah, you first. Yeah. I did learn during the fires that some insurance companies dispatched fire teams when the fire, they were actually monitoring this, when the fires were about a mile from the house. It would not work beforehand, but if they did that when there was a mile from the house, they went and sprayed them with something. Tell us about that service and who provides it.
So the companies that provide that right now are Chubb, AIG, and Pure.
And Cincinnati? I have it.
I'm actually not sure about that. Do they have? All right, if you had it, then fine.
That was one of my,
all right. So those companies provide, in essence, a private fire service. That fire service works in conjunction with the public fire department, and they'll ask, look, we've got 5 homes up on this street that we insure. We're in our command center, and we see the fire is headed that way. Is it safe for us to drive out there and spray the homes with this gel?
It's a gel.
If they get it okay from the local fire department, they'll run out there, and if you have pre-approved them as a homeowner to do this, it's no cost, but you have to sign a form saying it's okay. They'll run out there. And they have this amazing gel that is completely biodegradable. So you spray it up in the house, and let's say the fire doesn't come. They come back after the fire is gone.
Wash it down.
They wash it down. It goes right down the drain, and it's fine.
Does it really stop it from burning?
If it's applied properly, it is very difficult to lose a house with this stuff.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Now, are they spraying from the air, or are they coming in on the ground?
No, it's on the ground.
Wow.
There are some developments, because obviously that's a service. There are some developments, especially now with the fires, where there's some private companies that are trying to develop where you would literally, as a homeowner, it's expensive right now, but you would literally wheedle out like a hand truck, and you could actually spray this gel on your home if these guys aren't able to make it, right? And I do want to point out that the service isn't a guarantee. Obviously, they can't guarantee the house won't burn, and they can't guarantee that it will actually spray. Because what I saw happen in the fire was they had to make choices, where they thought the fire was going. Right? You might think, well, the fire is definitely coming towards my house, right? Because that's a natural presumption, right? No, come spray my house.
Yeah.
And they would say, no, we think the fire is going this way. We're going to go spray over here. And they would also make economic decisions. You know what? We have 10 houses in this neighborhood. We can spray them all at once. We have one house in your neighborhood over here. We're going to where the 10 houses are.
Wow. I mean, we are all learning about insurance. This is amazing. Really, really, truly amazing. Well, how do you feel that the insurance companies have handled your clients' claims?
So I had 28 claims in the Wine Country fire, and they're not all done by any means, but I would tell you that if you spoke to these 28 clients on the personal side, right, so the personal home and auto, I would tell you that I think clients are very happy. Things have worked the way they're supposed to work. There's, on the commercial side, like I have some winery clients, there's some issues still there to be worked out, but for personal clients, it's worked the way it's supposed to. You
know, it's interesting. From my business, my clients telling me what they've gone through, the vast differences in the way the different insurance companies have handled. Some of them have been paid out immediately, and like your contents are $1 million, here's $1 million. And then I've had clients who literally have been given 2 years to replace all of their furnishings, clothes, everything inside. And if you don't do it in 2 years, you don't get the money. And every time they buy a suit, a pair of shoes, a chair, they have to send in receipts. I mean, the stress on these people and the amount of paperwork involved that is still ongoing is unbelievable. I mean, it's just really, really awful.
Well, you know, some people will often ask me, does the insurance company really matter? My answer is it absolutely matters. Of course, it doesn't matter until you have a claim, right?
Right. Well, tell us about that.
Well, you know, I mean, certain companies every company has a reputation, and it can change, certainly with the life cycle of a company. But typically, you know, one of my jobs is to be able to tell you, like, look, I happen to know for right now, company A and B are the best at paying claims. What does that mean? That means is they're trying to figure out how to pay the claim. They're not trying to figure out how not to pay the claim.
Yes.
Right. So I think that's very important. And the other thing that's very important with insurance companies, every insurance company has a different contract. Not sometimes, lots of times, insurance companies have different contracts within the same company. Right? So you want to make sure, obviously, that you have the most comprehensive contract, because frequently the price between the best contract and the not so great contract is a wash. It's about the same or not very much.
Oh.
So one of the things you want to do in working with your insurance professional is to make sure that you are, in fact, getting that best contract.
And that's why it's good to use a broker, I think, because the brokers know across the board the different companies, whereas if you just go directly to, you know, Nationwide or State Farm or Allstate, or you don't know, right? You just choose them and you go to them and you don't know the differences. Talk to us about, gosh, we went through this during the fires, where obviously many people, including myself, you know, every year I never saw my insurance broker, and I wasn't asked, did I buy jewelry or art or whatever, which most of us don't go through that. We're buying things, maybe a new car or new this, new that. Tell us what should we do to document what we have? Because once you've been evacuated, it's too late to go and do a stock take, right? Should we do videos of our homes? I mean, some of the really wonderful situations where people had just had their homes videoed. I had a client like this and marketed, went on MLS that day, that night had burned to the ground. So had incredible pictures and video of everything that was there. So tell us, what should we be doing for our homes so we can prove what we had?
Well, certainly the video of the contents of the house is, you probably can't get a better start than that. However, I would say that another great step you can take, unfortunately I think people tend to think of insurance as set and forget. well, I sat down with this guy 7 years ago. We've decided what the coverages were, and I don't need to look at it again.
Yeah.
I tell folks, I think you really should sit down with your insurance professional once a year, because things are constantly changing on the insurance side, and they're constantly changing in your life.
I never think about it. I buy things, and I never ever change.
And when we were sitting down on an annual basis, that's the chance to say, oh, I bought X, Y, and Z, or I sold A, B, and C. I'm thinking about doing X.
Invested in wine, or whatever it might be, investment. Yeah, art.
And and one of the things I think you've probably discovered in dealing with folks up here in wine country is, going back to how insurance companies pay the claims. Some of the companies are like, well, okay, you had $1 million of contents. Here's $1 million. Go rebuild your house and the contents.
Yeah.
Some of them are like, no, when you go out and buy all this stuff, just send us the receipts. That's something you can ask up front, how they going to handle it.
That's a great question, everybody, because I've seen it and it's a nightmare.
Right.
It really is. What do you think the chances are that some of these insurance companies will not reinsure properties that burned?
Very little. If I want to just be a cold calculating underwriter type, the fact that the neighborhood just burned, you have 100 years worth of brush and trees that are all gone.
Yeah.
Right? The likelihood of having another huge fire in that neighborhood is probably very, very small. And so that's my cold calculating thought about it. But the other one is public relations. I don't want to be the insurance company that sends out a notice to Latif that just lost everything. That, oh, by the way, when you do rebuild your house, we don't want to insure it. It's not worth the negative publicity.
Right.
And is it possible? Sure. Do I think it's going to happen? No.
Listening to you, I really don't think that there is a way for the insurance companies to get out of bad publicity, because even if they are cancelling people, which we know that they are,
right,
and not taking on insurance when, like that horrible experience I'm just going through now, where, if this particular buyer is not able to get insurance, then nobody can. But as you say, everybody can get insurance. You might have to pay $50,000 for it instead of, $5,000 or $6,000 or $7,000, right? I actually think it's going to end up being more, what he's being quoted actually is more than 4 times, which is substantial. So I think they're going to get a bad rap for a while, but I think we all understand what they've been through as well.
Yeah. Obviously they're businesses, right? I think at the end of the day, there are markets out there. You can get coverage. You just have to be diligent about making sure that you're dotting the I's, crossing the T, and doing what needs to be done. I don't imagine the insurance companies like sending out the cancellations either.
No,
right?
I'm sure not.
And I can tell you, I got the question of the day. I've been with this particular company for 20 years. I've never filed a claim. Now they're going to cancel me. It's like, I don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
Right? Other than it's the fires and the hurricanes, and it's not just you.
You're not a person. They're looking at the numbers. Yeah.
Right.
Very interesting. Do you think that the buying habits of consumers has changed? And before you answer that, actually, I did want to say that I am now saying to all of my clients, saying to me, I want to put my property on the market. I say, firstly, go and call your insurance company and say, would they insure you again? Are they going to cancel your insurance? And then secondly, you've got to make sure that the insurance company would insure somebody else. We've got to make sure you've got insurance before you go on MLS, find a buyer, and then nobody can get insurance, or nobody wants to pay a fortune. So it's going to be very difficult for the real estate market, I think, for some years. Up here, for sure.
Like I said, obviously, like I said, the other day I dealt with the situation in San Francisco. Wildfires, not an issue, at least not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
Right? But the question is, have the behaviors of consumers changed with the fires? And probably right after the fire, for about 6 months after the fires last year, I had people ask me, is this a good company? Is this a good contract? Do I have the right amount of coverage? What I've noticed lately is that it's kind of starting to slip back now. I guess we all have short attention spans, short memories.
Yeah.
And people don't seem quite as concerned. So I've definitely noticed that trend. And the cancellations have just started happening, right? Within the last couple of months.
Oh, the last couple of months. I'm just starting to notice it. Yeah. Well, boy, I think about this every day. I'm thinking about my clients for it every day, and then I think, wow, if that person can't get it, then nobody can get it. And,
like I said, I do think it's available. And back to your point, it's like, look, if I'm buying a house that prior to the fires would cost $4,000 to insure, obviously, I personally, I want to know what it's going to cost to insure afterwards.
Yeah.
And if I'm told it's now going to cost 4 times $16,000,
yeah.
All right, so I know it's $1,000 extra. Am I willing to do
Per
that?
month.
Per month,
Yeah.
which is a lot of money, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's a decision I can make now that I have the factors.
Yeah, but the other thing that I'm hearing is coming with that is it's for less insurance.
Yes,
Right?
it's true.
So instead of, whatever per square foot to rebuild, it might be half of that. So the question is, particularly in the second home market, do buyers want to buy right now?
If you were showing me a house, I'd go look at the house and go, this is it, I want it. The first thing I would do is I would call my insurance broker, and say, hey, I'm looking at a house at ABC on Everywhere Street. Would you, as my existing insurance company, insure it? And they say yes, and I go, great. For how much? Cool. If they say no, then I'm going to call the existing homeowner and say, hey, who insures your coverage now? Then I'm going to check with them, and they say no. I'm going to check the entire market. And then if that is still all no from the mid markets, I'm going to go to London. Right, and get a factor. Then I have to decide how much do I love the house.
And then I do know for a fact that their insurance is like this. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's really low.
It is, but
a lot of money, really low.
Here's what I'd say: it will meet the requirements of the mortgage company, because most people have a mortgage, and a lot of these folks are getting the insurance because the mortgage company requires they have it. It will meet that requirement.
Right. So, what are the most common insurance claims that are made by people?
Well, certainly over the last year or so, because the wine country, it was the fires.
Right.
That's atypical.
Yeah.
On a national basis, believe it or not, wind is the most.
You're kidding.
No, it's wind followed by water. When I say water, I don't mean typically flood.
Yeah.
I mean the
leaks.
The leaks, right? You got the refrigerator that gives you the ice and the ice cold water. It bursts when you're away. And
the second homes that people aren't living in.
They're not there for 2 weeks.
Yes.
You come back and everything's flooded, or it's the bathroom upstairs.
Interesting.
So those are
very interesting.
And even actually vandalism and theft are more common than fire.
Okay, I'd love to know what are the best steps that one could take to reduce their insurance costs?
Well, I think it goes to asking questions. So the question I would always want to ask is, let me back it up for a second. First thing, I think you have to approach insurance, in my opinion, from a standpoint of what can I afford? And I look at it from the perspective of deductibles and dwelling coverage. So one of the things we're heard, especially out of Santa Rosa, that people didn't have enough coverage to rebuild their homes.
Right.
So my opinion is that if my fence blows over in the wind, right, I may not like that, but I can probably afford to pay for a brand new fence out of my own pocket.
Right.
I don't like it, but I can do it. If the house burns to the ground, I'm in trouble.
You're in trouble.
I can't afford to pay for the house out of my own pocket. So what I would like to do is probably look at deductibles. And I'm frequently amazed by the low deductible amounts I see. So for me, I would look to see, hey, if I go from $1,000 deductible to $2,500 to $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the amounts are.
Deductible.
What are the savings?
Yeah.
And then I want to make sure that I'm also sitting down with my insurance advisor expert to make sure that I've got coverages that I need. Sometimes it's like, what's this over here? I don't have one of these, or I don't have one of these anymore.
Right.
Ask the underwriter, the market, what can I do to reduce this? And I'll use another personal example. A number of years ago, I installed for I think about $600 a gas shutoff valve. So that if there's an earthquake over a certain magnitude, I forget what it is, it automatically turns off my gas so the house can't burn. Right? It cost $600. If I recall correctly, it reduced my premium, and it took 4 years for me to recoup the cost. So after that, I'm saving money on my premiums every year.
Yeah.
So I have a safer house,
and
I'm paying less for insurance.
And what about insurance? What about alarm system?
Another great example.
Yeah.
Most of the insurance companies will give you some type of discount if you install a central alarm.
Right. What are your predictions for the next few years?
Yeah, well, I would say this. Assuming that we don't have any new hurricanes, any fires, mudslides, that things kind of go back to what I would call more of a normal routine, I think we'll probably have about another year of a hard market, maybe 2 more. And then, there's a lot of money floating around the insurance industry. And I think that competition will come back in and say, you know what, I'm making this up, but we don't need to charge 4 times as much. We'll do it for 3. We'll do it for 2. Before you know it, we're back into the admitted market.
So 3 or 4 years down the road, we should be back to where we are.
I would hope at the latest.
Yeah.
Once again, dependent upon no brand new disasters.
Tell us about earthquake insurance. What do you think about that?
Well, it's very expensive.
Yes, I know.
About 12% of the people in California have it. I would tell you, going back to my philosophy of I can afford the fence blowing over, can't afford the house falling down.
Yeah.
I have it. I took very large deductibles on everything else.
Yeah.
And it's still more expensive than my home,
Yeah.
my fire insurance for the house.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time since we had one. And at some point in time, we're going to have a big one.
Yeah, well, we had a big one. I was wide awake at 3 o'clock in the morning when we had the last one, which was violent, and I had no insurance, earthquake insurance, and I thought to myself, oh my God, I could not afford to rebuild this house. So I took it out. Very happy to have it. It's very, very expensive.
It is very expensive.
Yeah.
I will tell you this, though. I don't think the insurance company is still properly priced earthquake insurance. I think that in hindsight, when there is a big earthquake,
It's going to be...
they're going to look back and say, we didn't charge anywhere near enough.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Any takeaways? This is our last question. I just run out of time, unfortunately. Anything else you'd like to share with us about insurance?
Just generally speaking, I mentioned that clearly dwelling limits. How much money I have to rebuild the house is dramatically important.
Yes.
Approximately 60% of U.S. homeowners are underinsured, between 20 and 50% of what they should have.
Oh.
Right. So look at that. Ask your insurance agent, broker, consultant, whoever it is, sit down with me, explain to me what I have, but just as importantly, what I don't have. Now, we've been talking about fire today. One of the most single common mistakes I see for folks, especially here in California, is liability insurance. What if something happens when I'm driving the car or someone slips and falls at my house? Do I have insurance for liability? And the answer is you have a little bit in your homeowner's insurance, but if you don't have a separate liability policy, you're in trouble. And I'm constantly amazed at how many people who have significant wealth or potential future wealth have little or no coverage. So I would tell your viewers to make sure they're looking at that also, so that they're dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
Oh, and I'm going to be calling you straight after this interview to ask you if I have it.
You do.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Oh, I do have one last question.
Sure.
Does it cost more money, our viewers will love this question, to have a broker or not? Does it cost more money for insurance?
It does not. So it's the same coverage, it's the same price. The differentiation is that you have what we call direct writers. You mentioned them earlier. Companies like State Farm, Farmers. Those agents only work with those insurance companies. I work with all the available insurance markets, and the insurance markets pay me directly. And if you go directly, it's the same price you pay as going through me.
Fantastic. That's great to know.
All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you, everybody. We look forward to seeing you next week.